In the fog-drenched halls of 17 Belgrave Square, Lady Beatrice Ashford vanishes from her locked bedroom, leaving only a half-smoked cigarette and a cryptic note. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, unravels a web of deception, stolen, diamonds, a hidden room, a masked conspirator, and a scandalous past threatening a fortune. As the clock ticks toward a critical deadline, a second disappearance deepens the mystery. Secrets unravel, motives clash, and the truth lies buried in the shadows of a legacy. Will Poirot outwit the mastermind before it's too late? Chapter 1. The Vanishing Heiress. The autumn fog clung to the cobblestones of London like a shroud, muffling the clatter of horse-drawn carriages and the distant cries of newspaper boys. It was October 1925, and the city hummed with its usual restless energy, though a peculiar stillness hung over the grand estate at 17 Belgrave Square. The residence, a stately Georgian mansion with towering columns and ivy-clad walls, belonged to the widowed Lady Beatrice Ashford, heiress to the Ashford diamond fortune. It was here, in the early hours of that damp morning, that the impossible occurred. Lady Beatrice vanished from her locked bedroom, leaving behind no trace but a single untouched glass of brandy on her bedside table. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as precise as his mind, stood at the center of the opulent bedroom, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the Persian rug. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, surveyed the scene with the intensity of a hawk. The room was a study in elegance. Silk drapes framed tall windows, a mahogany four-poster bed dominated one wall, and a crystal chandelier cast fractured light across the ceiling. Yet, for all its grandeur, the room felt hollow, as if the absence of its occupant had drained it of life. "Mon ami," Poirot said, addressing his friend and confidant, Captain Arthur Hastings, who stood near the door. "This is no ordinary disappearance. It is a puzzle, a riddle wrapped in the enigma of human ambition, and yet the solution lies here, in these little details." Hastings, a man of sturdy build and earnest demeanor, adjusted his tie nervously. "I don't know, Poirot, it's dashed peculiar. The door was locked from the inside, the windows bolted, and the staff swear no one entered or left. It's as if she evaporated." Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Evaporated?" "Non, Hastings. People do not evaporate. They are taken, or they choose to vanish. And Lady Beatrice, I suspect, did not choose." The call had come at dawn, rousing Poirot from his meticulously ordered apartment in Whitehaven Mansions. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, a man whose gruff exterior belied a grudging respect for Poirot's methods, had been blunt. "It's a queer one, Poirot. The Ashford woman's gone, and we've got nothing. No body, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses. The family's in a panic and the press is already sniffing about. I need your brain on this." Poirot had arrived at Belgrave Square to find the household in disarray. The butler, a stooped man named Grayson with a face like weathered parchment, wrung his hands as he recounted the morning's discovery. Lady Beatrice, a woman of 42 known for her reclusive habits and sharp wit, had retired to her room at 10 the previous evening. She had dismissed her maid Clara with instructions not to disturb her until morning. At 7 o'clock, when Clara knocked and received no answer, she alerted Grayson. The butler, using a spare key, unlocked the door to find the room empty. The bed was made, the brandy untouched, and the heiress gone. Now, as Poirot paced the room, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, he absorbed every detail. The air carried a faint scent of lavender, likely from the sachet in the wardrobe. The fireplace was cold, its ashes undisturbed. A silver cigarette case lay on a side table, its lid open to reveal a single cigarette half-smoked. Poirot paused, his eyes narrowing. "Hastings," he said, "observe the cigarette. It is not crushed, not discarded, but placed with care. Why does one begin to smoke? Only to stop and leave it so." Hastings shrugged. Perhaps she was interrupted. "Précisément," Poirot murmured. "But by whom? Or what?" He moved to the windows, their heavy bolts intact. The glass was unmarred, the sills free of dirt or scratches. Outside, the garden lay shrouded in fog, its hedges and fountains ghostly shapes in the gloom. No ladder marks, no footprints, no sign of forced entry. Poirot's gaze lingered on the window frame, then shifted to the lock on the door. It was a sturdy brass mechanism, its key still inserted from the inside. Impossible, Hastings muttered. Unless she climbed out the chimney like Father Christmas. Poirot chuckled softly. The chimney, no. But the impossible, Hastings, is merely the improbable in disguise. We must consider all possibilities, no matter how fantastical they seem. The household staff, gathered in the drawing room downstairs, offered little clarity. Grayson, the butler, insisted he had heard nothing unusual during the night. Clara, the maid, a nervous girl of 20 with wide eyes, stammered that Lady Beatrice had seemed distracted, but otherwise normal. The cook, Mrs. Henshaw, and the gardener, Tompkins, confirmed they had been in their quarters at the rear of the estate, far from the main house. The only other resident was Lady Beatrice's nephew, Reginald Ashford, a dashing man of 30 who had arrived 2 days prior to discuss family matters. Reginald, when questioned, cut a striking figure, tall, with slicked back hair and a tailored suit that spoke of wealth. His blue eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of unease as Poirot studied him. "I don't know what happened, Mr. Poirot," Reginald said, lighting a cigarette with a trembling hand. "Aunt Beatrice was fine when I saw her last night. We talked about the estate, the diamonds, her plans to sell some of the collection. She was, well, herself. Sharp as ever." Poirot tilted his head. "And yet, she vanishes. Tell me, monsieur. Ashford, these diamonds, were they kept here in the house?" Reginald hesitated. "In the safe, yes. Downstairs in the study, but it's untouched. I checked." "Fremont?" Poirot's tone was mild, but his eyes gleamed. "You checked the safe. Most interesting." The safe, a hulking steel contraption hidden behind a portrait of Lady Beatrice's late husband, Sir Edmund Ashford, was, indeed, secure. Its combination lock showed no signs of tampering, and Reginald, after some prodding, opened it to reveal a velvet-lined tray of glittering diamonds. Poirot noted the careful arrangement, the absence of dust, and the faint scent of oil on the hinges. "Nothing missing," Reginald said, a touch too quickly. Poirot did not reply. Instead, he turned his attention to the study itself. A heavy oak desk dominated the room, its surface cluttered with papers, a fountain pen, and an ink blotter. A single sheet caught Poirot's eye, a letter, half-written, addressed to a solicitor, named Mr. Hargreaves. The words were formal, discussing the transfer of assets, but one phrase stood out: "I fear I am no longer safe." The sentence ended abruptly, the pen lying beside it as if dropped mid-thought. "Hastings," Poirot said, holding up the letter, "this is not the work of a woman who simply vanished. This is the cry of one who knew danger was near." The day wore on, with Poirot interviewing each member of the household again, cross-referencing their stories. Clara, the maid, admitted to hearing a faint thud around midnight but dismissed it as a dream. Grayson, the butler, revealed that Lady Beatrice had recently argued with Reginald over the sale of the diamonds, though he claimed not to know the details. Mrs. Henshaw, the cook, mentioned a stranger, a man in a dark coat, seen near the estate's gates a week prior, though no one else corroborated this. By evening, the fog had thickened, and the press had descended upon Belgrave Square like vultures. Headlines screamed of "The Vanishing Heiress" and "The Ashford Mystery." Inspector Japp, pacing the drawing room, was growing impatient. "Look, Poirot," he said, "we've got no body, no ransom note, no evidence of foul play. Maybe she just ran off. She's a recluse after all. Maybe she cracked under the pressure." Poirot shook his head. "Non, Inspector. Lady Beatrice was not a woman to flee. She was a woman of order, of control. Her disappearance is deliberate, orchestrated. We must look beyond the obvious." That night, Poirot and Hastings remained at the estate, the guest rooms cold and silent. Poirot sat by the fire in the library, his notebook open, his pencil sketching diagrams of the bedroom. The safe, the letter. He murmured to himself, piecing together fragments of the day's observations. The half-smoked cigarette, the untouched brandy, the letter's abrupt end, the stranger in the dark coat. Each was a thread in a tapestry he could not yet see. "Hastings," he said at last, "tomorrow we shall return to the bedroom. There is something we have missed, a detail so small it escapes even the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot, but it is there, waiting." Hastings yawned. "I hope you're right. Old chap, this case is giving me the creeps." Poirot smiled. "Fear not, mon ami. The truth, it always reveals itself to those who seek it with method and precision." The following morning, Poirot returned to Lady Beatrice's bedroom, his steps deliberate. He examined the cigarette case again, noting its weight, its shine. He ran a gloved finger along the bed frame, pausing at a faint scratch near the headboard. He knelt, peering beneath the bed, and his eyes caught a glint. Something small, metallic, wedged between the floorboards. With a handkerchief, he retrieved it. A tiny key, no larger than a matchstick, its surface etched with a delicate pattern. Poirot held it to the light, his expression unreadable. "What's that?" Hastings asked, leaning over. "A key, Hastings," Poirot said softly. "But to what lock? That is the question." The discovery of the key marked a turning point. Poirot's inquiries grew more pointed, his questions to the household sharper. He pressed Reginald on his whereabouts at midnight, noting the young man's evasiveness. He questioned Clara about the stranger in the dark coat, her answers growing, more hesitant. And he returned to the safe, examining its hinges, its lock, its contents with renewed scrutiny. By midday, a new piece of information emerged. A telegram arrived from Mr. Har. Chapter 2. Clues in the Shadows. The morning after Lady Beatrice Ashford's mysterious disappearance, the grand estate at 17 Belgrave Square buzzed with a restless energy. The fog that had cloaked London the previous day lingered, casting a gray veil over the manicured gardens and the Georgian mansion's imposing facade. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, his mustache waxed to perfection, stood once more in the heiress's bedroom, his sharp green eyes scanning every corner as if the walls themselves might whisper their secrets. Captain Arthur Hastings hovered near the doorway, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease, while Inspector Japp paced the corridor outside, barking orders to his men. "Poirot," Hastings said, rubbing his hands together against the chill. "I still can't make heads or tails of it. A locked room, no signs of a struggle, and not a soul saw anything. It's as if the devil himself spirited her away." Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "The devil, Hastings? None. The devil is too theatrical for such a crime. This is the work of a human mind, a clever one perhaps, but not infallible. The truth? It hides in the shadows, in the details we overlook. And today we shall bring those details into the light." He moved with deliberate grace, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug. The bedroom, though grand, felt sterile in its emptiness. The four-poster bed, draped in crimson silk, stood untouched, its pillows perfectly aligned. The chandelier above gleamed, its crystals catching the weak morning light filtering through the bolted windows. The silver cigarette case on the side table, with its single half-smoked cigarette, drew Poirot's attention once more. He picked it up, turning it over in his gloved hands, noting its weight, its polish, the faint scratch on its edge. "Curious," he murmured. This cigarette, it was placed with care, not discarded. Why does one light a cigarette, take a single puff, and then abandon it? It is not the act of a woman distracted, but of one who wishes us to believe she was interrupted. Hastings frowned. "You think it was staged?" "Précisément," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "This room, it is a stage, and we are meant to see only the performance, not the machinery behind it." He turned to the bedside table where the untouched glass of brandy stood, its amber liquid catching the light. Poirot leaned close, inhaling deeply. No odor of poison, no residue. Yet why leave it untouched? Lady Beatrice. She was known to enjoy a nightcap. This glass, it tells a story of its own. He stepped back, his gaze sweeping the room anew. The fireplace, cold and clean, offered no clues. The wardrobe, filled with elegant gowns and a faint scent of lavender, revealed nothing unusual. But Poirot's attention lingered on the floor where the rug met the polished oak boards. He knelt, his fingers brushing the edge of the rug, and paused. A faint smudge, barely visible, marked the wood. A trace of dirt, perhaps, or something more. "Hastings," he called, "fetch a magnifying glass from my case, s'il vous plaît." Hastings hurried to comply, retrieving the small leather case Poirot always carried. Under the magnifying glass, the smudge revealed itself as a faint footprint, partial and smeared, as if someone had stepped lightly and then attempted to erase the mark. Poirot traced its outline, noting the size and shape. "A man's shoe," he said softly. "Not large, but distinct. The heel, it is worn unevenly, suggesting a slight limp. Most interesting." Japp, who had entered the room, snorted. "A footprint, that's your big clue, Poirot?" "Could be anyone's. Grayson, Reginald, even one of my men traipsing about yesterday." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Patience, Inspector. A footprint is not merely a mark, it is a signature. And this one, it does not belong to your men, who wear standard boots, nor to Grayson, whose shoes I observed are impeccably polished. No, this is something else. A clue left by accident, or perhaps by design." The investigation moved downstairs, where the household awaited in the drawing room. The air was thick with tension, the staff and family seated in a semicircle like actors awaiting their cues. Reginald Ashford, the nephew, lounged in an armchair, his cigarette sending curls of smoke toward the ceiling. Clara, the maid, sat on the edge of a chair, her hands twisting a handkerchief. Grayson, the butler, stood by the door, his posture rigid, his face unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw, the cook, and Tompkins, the gardener, occupied the far end, their expressions a mix of fear and confusion. Poirot stood before them, his small frame, commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, "the disappearance of Lady Beatrice is no accident. It is a crime, carefully planned, designed to confound. But the criminal in their cleverness has left traces, small, yes, but enough for Hercule Poirot to see. I ask you now to be truthful. What did you hear? What did you see in the hours before she vanished?" Clara's eyes darted to Grayson, then away. "I told you, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "I heard a thud around midnight. I thought it was nothing, maybe a book falling. I was half asleep." Poirot nodded, his gaze lingering on her. "A thud, Mademoiselle Clara. And where were you when you heard this?" "In my room, sir, in the servants' quarters. It's down, the hall from the main staircase." "And you, Monsieur Grayson?" Poirot turned to the butler. "You were awake, no? A man of your diligence does not sleep through the night in a house such as this." Grayson's lips tightened. "I was. In my quarters, Mr. Poirot. I heard nothing unusual. The house was quiet." "Quiet," Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful. "And yet, a woman vanishes, and a footprint appears where none should be. Most curious." Reginald exhaled a plume of smoke, his voice sharp. "Look here, Poirot, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Aunt Beatrice was eccentric. Maybe she wandered off, got lost in the fog. She's not exactly stable, you know." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Eccentric, Monsieur Ashford? Or inconvenient? You spoke with her about the diamonds, did you not? About her plans to sell them?" Reginald stiffened. "We discussed business, yes. The Ashford diamonds are worth a fortune, and she was planning to liquidate some for investments. I advised against it, but she was stubborn." "Stubborn," Poirot echoed. "And yet you checked the safe, did you not? Before anyone else. Why such haste?" Reginald's face reddened. "I wanted to be sure nothing was stolen. Is that a crime?" "Not a crime," Poirot said smoothly, "but a curiosity. The safe, it is untouched, yet you felt the need to confirm this. Why? Reginald said nothing, his jaw tight. Poirot turned. To the others, his questions relentless. Mrs. Henshaw admitted to hearing a creak in the night but attributed it to the old house settling. Tompkins, the gardener, claimed he was asleep in his cottage by the stables, far from the main house. Each answer was plausible, yet Poirot's instincts told him that the truth lay buried beneath layers of half-truths. He dismissed the household, save for Clara, whom he asked to remain. The maid's eyes widened, her hands clutching the handkerchief, like a lifeline. Poirot's voice softened, but his gaze was piercing. "Mademoiselle Clara," he said, "you are young, loyal, but frightened. You know more than you say. The thud you heard, was it truly a book, or did you see someone in the shadows?" Clara's lips trembled. I don't know, sir. I swear I didn't see anyone. But there was something odd. When I brought Lady Beatrice her tea yesterday afternoon, she was pacing, muttering to herself. She said something about not trusting them. I didn't know who she meant. "Them," Poirot repeated. "And you did not ask?" Clara shook her head. "It wasn't my place, sir. She was always private, kept to herself. But she seemed scared." Poirot nodded, dismissing her with a gentle wave. As she left, he turned to Hastings, who had been scribbling notes in a small pad. "Scared, Hastings," Poirot said. "A woman of Lady Beatrice's strength does not frighten easily, yet she feared them. Who are these them? The family? The staff? Or someone else lurking beyond these walls?" Hastings scratched his head. "It's a deuced mess, Poirot. We've got a footprint, a cigarette, a glass of brandy, and a scared maid. Where do we go from here?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "We go deeper, mon ami, into the shadows where the clues hide. Come, we shall examine the house inch by inch." The rest of the day was spent in meticulous exploration. Poirot and Hastings moved through the estate, from the attic's dusty beams to the cellar's damp stone walls. They found nothing overt, no hidden passages, no secret compartments, but Poirot's attention was drawn to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound books. A ladder led to a second level of shelves, and there, tucked behind a volume of Shakespeare, Poirot found a small notebook, its pages filled with Lady Beatrice's elegant script. The notebook was a diary of sorts, though not personal in the traditional sense. It contained notes on the Ashford diamonds, their origins, their value, and a list of potential buyers. One entry, dated a week prior, stood out. "R presses again. He does not understand the risk. I must protect the legacy, even if it means defying them all." "R," Hastings said, peering over Poirot's shoulder. "Reginald, surely." "Perhaps," Poirot said, closing the notebook. "But we must not assume. The them again. It suggests a conspiracy, a group. We must learn who Lady Beatrice feared." They moved to the study, where the safe lay behind Sir Edmund's portrait. Poirot examined the papers on the desk, again, focusing on the half-written letter to Mr. Hargreaves, the solicitor. The phrase, "I fear I am no longer safe," gnawed at him. He rifled through the other papers. Chapter 3. The Alibi Conundrum. The third day of the investigation at 17 Belgrave Square dawned with a brittle clarity, the fog that had smothered London finally giving way to a pale, watery sun. The grand estate, with its ivy-clad walls and towering columns, stood as a silent witness to the mystery of Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance. Inside, the air was thick with suspicion, the household moving through their routines like actors in a play they no longer understood. Hercule Poirot, his black patent leather shoes gleaming, stood in the drawing room, his hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes sharp as they surveyed the gathered occupants. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood by his side, his notebook open, his brow furrowed. Inspector Japp, his patience fraying, leaned against the mantelpiece, his arms crossed. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice a measured cadence that commanded attention. "We are faced with a crime that seeks to mock us, a disappearance so perfect it defies reason. Yet reason, it is my ally, and it tells me that the truth lies not in what we see, but in what we are meant to see. Today we shall examine the alibis, for it is in the stories we tell that the lies are revealed. His gaze settled on Reginald Ashford, the heiress's nephew who sat in a velvet-upholstered chair, his legs crossed, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. Reginald's tailored suit was impeccable, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, a shadow that Poirot noted with interest. "Monsieur Ashford," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "you claim you were in your room at the time of Lady Beatrice's disappearance between 10 o'clock and midnight. You retired after your discussion with her, did you not?" Reginald exhaled a plume of smoke, his voice steady but clipped. "That's right, Mr. Poirot. I spoke with Aunt Beatrice, in the library around 9. We discussed the diamonds as I told you. I went to my room after that, read for a bit, and turned in. Didn't hear a thing until the commotion the next morning." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. "Vraiment? And what did you read, monsieur? A novel, perhaps? Or something more practical?" Reginald's jaw tightened. "A financial journal. The Economist, if you must know. I was catching up on market trends." "Most commendable," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "And you heard nothing? No thud, as Mademoiselle Clara reported? No creak of the house? No footsteps?" "Nothing," Reginald said firmly. "The house was quiet. I slept like a log." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable, and turned to Clara, the maid, who sat on the edge of a chair, her hands twisting her handkerchief into knots. "And you, Mademoiselle Clara, you heard a thud at midnight, yet you did not investigate. Your room, it is near the main staircase, oui?" Clara nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes, sir. I was in bed, half asleep. I thought it was nothing, just the house settling, like Mrs. Henshaw said. I didn't want to make a fuss." "A fuss," Poirot repeated softly. "And yet, a woman vanishes. And you, who are so close to her quarters, hear nothing more? No voices, no movement?" Clara shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "No, sir, I swear it." Poirot's gaze shifted to Grayson, the butler, whose rigid posture and impassive face seemed carved from stone. "Monsieur Grayson, you are the guardian of this house, its eyes and ears. You were in your quarters, you say, at the rear of the estate. Yet you heard nothing, saw nothing?" Grayson's voice was calm, measured. "As I told you, Mr. Poirot, the night was uneventful. I retired at 10:30, after ensuring the house was secure. My quarters are far from Lady Beatrice's room. I heard no disturbances." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the stranger in the dark coat reported by Madame Henshaw, you were informed of this, yet you did not act. Why?" Grayson's lips thinned. "Mrs. Henshaw mentioned a man at the gates, yes. I assumed he was a passerby, perhaps a vagrant. I saw no need to alarm the household over such a trivial matter." "Trivial," Poirot mused. "A woman disappears. A footprint is found. A cigarette matches one at the gates, and yet you call it trivial. Most curious." He turned to Mrs. Henshaw, the cook, whose ruddy cheeks flushed under his scrutiny. "Madame, you saw this stranger. You spoke to Grayson. Did you see this man again, perhaps closer to the house?" Mrs. Henshaw shook her head, her hand smoothing her apron. "No, sir, just that once from the kitchen window. He was tall, wore a dark coat and hat. I didn't get a good look at his face." "And you, Monsieur Tompkins?" Poirot addressed the gardener, a wiry man with calloused hands seated at the back. "You were in your cottage by the stables, oui? Far from the house, yet you saw nothing, heard nothing?" Tompkins nodded, his voice gruff. "That's right, sir. I was asleep by 9. The stables are a good distance from the main house. Didn't hear a peep." Poirot clasped his hands, pacing slowly before the group. "A perfect circle of alibis," he said, his voice carrying a hint of irony. "Each of you, tucked safely in your rooms, hearing nothing, seeing nothing. Yet Lady Beatrice is gone, and the clues, the footprint, the cigarette, the letter, tell a different story. Someone, or perhaps several, are not what they seem. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling like dust. Reginald stubbed out his cigarette, his movements sharp. Clara's handkerchief was now a crumpled mess. Grayson's eyes remained fixed on a point above Poirot's head, while Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins exchanged uneasy glances. Poirot dismissed the group, save for Reginald, whom he asked to remain. The nephew stood, his posture defensive, as the others filed out. Hastings closed the door and Japp joined them, his expression skeptical. "All right, Poirot," Japp said. "You've got us all in a tizzy with your questions, but where's it leading? These alibis are solid. No one's story contradicts another, and we've got no evidence to pin on anyone." Poirot smiled faintly. "Solid, Inspector?" "Non. They are too solid, too perfect. An alibi, it must have the texture of truth. Imperfect, human. These are rehearsed, polished. And Monsieur Ashford, his alibi, it is the most polished of all." Reginald's eyes flashed. "What are you implying, Poirot? I've told you everything. I was in my room reading, sleeping. You can't prove otherwise." "Proof," Poirot said, "is a matter of time. But let us examine your story, monsieur. You read The Economist, you say, yet your room, when I inspected it this morning, contains no such journal. Only novels, Conan Doyle, Wells. Curious, non?" Reginald's face reddened. I must have misplaced it, or left it in the library." "The library," Poirot said, nodding. "We shall check. But first, tell me, why did you go to the safe so quickly after your aunt's disappearance?" "Before even the police were called? I told you," Reginald snapped. "I wanted to be sure the diamonds were safe. They're the family legacy." "Legacy," Poirot said, his voice soft but piercing. "Or your salvation? Your debts? Monsieur Ashford, they are considerable, are they not? A shipping venture, you say, but the prospectus you showed me. It is too perfect, too convenient. And the name Vandermeer and Sons. It appears in your aunt's diary, in her telegram. Were you working with them, perhaps, to pressure her?" Reginald's hands clenched. "That's absurd. I'm not a criminal. I cared about Aunt Beatrice." "Cared," Poirot said. "Or coveted. We shall see." He dismissed Reginald, who stormed out, leaving a trail of cigarette smoke. Japp shook his head. "You're pushing hard, Poirot, but we've got nothing concrete. A missing journal? A footprint that could belong to anyone? We need more." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And more we shall have, Inspector. The alibis, they are the key. They are too perfect, and perfection, it is the flaw of the guilty." The investigation continued with a thorough search of Reginald's room. Poirot, with Hastings trailing behind, examined every detail. The neatly made bed, the wardrobe filled with tailored suits, the desk cluttered with papers. No economist was found, but a crumpled receipt from a London club, dated the night of the disappearance, caught Poirot's eye. It showed Reginald had been there until 10:30, contradicting his claim of retiring at 10. "Interesting," Poirot murmured, pocketing the receipt. He was not in his room as he claimed, but where was he between 10:30 and midnight? They moved to the library, searching for the elusive journal. Among the shelves, Poirot found a copy of The Economist, but its pages were pristine, uncreased, as if unread. He set it aside, his mind turning to the diary found the previous day. He reopened it, rereading Lady Beatrice's entry about R and them. The word them gnawed at him. A conspiracy, perhaps, involving more than one player. The afternoon brought a new lead. A constable arrived with information from a local pawnshop. A diamond, matching the description of one from the Ashford collection, had been sold 2 days prior by a man in a dark coat. The pawnbroker's description was vague. Tall, scarred, possibly the same blackjack Mrs. Henshaw had seen. Poirot's interest piqued. "We must find this blackjack," he told Japp. "He is the shadow in our puzzle, the man who connects the cigarette at the gate to the one in the room." Japp dispatched men to scour the docks, where blackjack was known to operate. Meanwhile, Poirot returned to the bedroom, drawn again to the footprint. He measured it once more, comparing it to a sketch he had made. The uneven heel suggested a limp, a detail he filed away. He also re-examined the cigarette case, noting a faint inscription on its underside. To be, with love, E. Likely from Sir Edmund, Lady Beatrice's late husband. But why leave it open with a single cigarette? The day wore on with Poirot in Chapter 4. Whispers of Motive. The fourth day at 17 Belgrave Square unfolded under a sky bruised with clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. The grand estate, its Georgian facade weathered but proud, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule. Poirot continued his relentless pursuit of the truth behind Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance. The mystery had deepened. The clues, a smudged footprint, a half-smoked cigarette, a cryptic diary entry, and a damning receipt, pointing to a web of deception spun within the household. Poirot, his black suit immaculate, his mustache a precise line above his lip, stood in the library, his green eyes scanning the shelves as if the books themselves might yield answers. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever faithful, stood nearby, his notebook filled with scribbled observations, while Inspector Japp, his frustration mounting, hovered by the door, awaiting a breakthrough. Poirot, Japp said, his voice gruff. We've got a footprint that proves nothing. A cigarette anyone could have smoked and a receipt that only shows Reginald's a bad liar. We're chasing shadows here. If you've got something up your sleeve, now's the time to show it. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile, his hands clasped behind his back. Shadows, Inspector? None, these are not shadows, but whispers. Whispers of motive, of greed, of fear. The truth, it does not shout. It murmurs, and we must listen closely. Today we shall uncover why Lady Beatrice was taken, for the why will lead us to the bore. Who? Hastings, adjusting his tie, looked skeptical. Motive, Poirot? Seems to me everyone's got a reason to want those diamonds. Reginald's up to his neck in debt, Clara's jumpy as a cat, and Grayson's too calm for my liking. Even the cook and gardener could be in on it, for all we know. Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. Précisément, Hastings. Motive is the heart of this crime, but it is not singular. There is a tapestry here, woven of many threads. Greed, yes, but also betrayal, perhaps revenge. We must unravel it, thread by thread. The morning began with a deeper dive into the household's dynamics. Poirot requested a private audience, with each member, starting with Reginald Ashford, the heiress's nephew, whose shaky alibi had already raised suspicions. They met in the study, where the safe, hidden behind Sir Edmund's portrait, loomed like a silent sentinel. Reginald, his hair slicked back, his suit slightly rumpled, lit a cigarette with a trembling hand. Monsieur Ashford, Poirot began, seating himself behind the oak desk. Your aunt's diary speaks of our and them, of a fear for her safety. You argued with her about the diamonds, no? You pressed her to sell to fund your ventures. Tell me, what was the nature of this argument? Reginald exhaled sharply, his eyes narrowing. It wasn't an argument, Mr. Poirot, just a discussion. Aunt Beatrice was sitting on a fortune, those diamonds locked away like relics. I suggested selling a few to invest in shipping, good solid returns. She didn't like the idea, said it was too risky. We went back and forth, but it wasn't heated. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And yet her diary suggests otherwise. She wrote of risk and defying them all. You are you not? And who are them? Reginald's face flushed. I don't know any them. She was paranoid, always seeing threats where there weren't any. Maybe she meant the staff or her solicitor, Hargreaves. She didn't trust easily. Paranoid, Poirot repeated, his tone soft but sharp. Or perceptive. You lied about your whereabouts the night she vanished, monsieur. You were at a club until 10:30, not in your room reading. Why hide this? Reginald stubbed out his cigarette, his voice tight. I told you, I didn't think it mattered. I was back by 11, long before anything happened. I didn't want to look suspicious. Suspicious, Poirot mused. And yet by lying you have made yourself so. Your debts, they are substantial, A man in debt is a man under pressure, and pressure it can drive one to desperate acts. Reginald stood, his fists clenched. I didn't touch her, Poirot, I wouldn't, she's family. Poirot waved a hand, dismissing him. We shall see, monsieur. The truth it does not hide forever. Next, Poirot spoke with Clara, the maid, in the small parlor off the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she sat, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting an interruption. Poirot's voice was gentle, almost paternal. "Mademoiselle Clara," he said, "you are young, loyal, but afraid. Lady Beatrice trusted you, did she not? She confided in you, perhaps, about her fears?" Clara nodded, her voice barely audible. "Sometimes, sir. She'd talk while I helped with her hair or brought her tea. She said things about not trusting people in the house. She never named names, but she'd look out the window like she was watching for someone." "Someone," Poirot said, leaning forward. "The man in the dark coat, perhaps? The one Madame Henshaw saw?" Clara's eyes widened. "I don't know, sir. I never saw him myself, but she was nervous the last few days. Kept checking the locks, asking if anyone had been in her room." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And had anyone been in her room, mademoiselle? Besides you?" Clara hesitated, then shook her head. "Not that I know, sir. But Grayson, he's always about checking things. He's particular, likes everything just so." "Grayson," Poirot said, filing the detail away. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful." The interview with Grayson, the butler, took place in the dining room, its long mahogany table gleaming under the chandelier. Grayson stood, his posture as rigid as ever, his gray eyes meeting Poirot's without flinching. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, "you have served Lady Beatrice for 20 years, oui? You know her habits, her fears. Yet you dismiss the stranger. At the gates you hear nothing the night she vanishes. Why do you remain so calm in the face of such a mystery?" Grayson's voice was even, almost mechanical. "It is my duty, Mr. Poirot, to maintain order in this house. Panic serves no purpose. I saw no stranger, heard no disturbance. If Lady Beatrice was taken, it was not through any failure of mine." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Duty, monsieur, is a fine word, but it can mask many things. Loyalty, yes, but also ambition. You knew of her plans to sell the diamonds, did you not? Did you approve?" Grayson's lips tightened. "Lady Beatrice's decisions were her own. I advised caution, as always. But she was determined. The diamonds are the Ashford legacy, not to be parted with lightly." "Legacy," Poirot said, his voice soft. "And yet someone sought to part her from it. You were informed of the stranger, yet you did nothing. Why?" "I judged it insignificant," Grayson said. "A mistake, perhaps, but an honest one." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Honest, monsieur? We shall see." The interviews with Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins yielded little new. The cook reiterated her story of the stranger, adding only that he seemed to linger longer than she'd first thought. Tompkins, gruff and taciturn, insisted he'd been asleep in his cottage, unaware of any trouble. Poirot noted their responses but sensed no overt deception. Yet, with the household questioned, Poirot turned his attention to the diary, which he retrieved from the library. He sat at a small table, Hastings at his side, and pored over its pages. The entries, written in Lady Beatrice's elegant hand, were a mix of mundane and cryptic. She noted meetings with her solicitor, Mr. Hargreaves, and the Amsterdam merchant, Vandermeer and Sons. She mentioned Reginald's insistence on the shipping venture, her own doubts about its viability. But one entry, dated 3 days before, her disappearance, stood out. "They think I am blind, but I see their game. The legacy must be protected at all costs." "They," Hastings said, pointing at the word. "There it is again, Poirot. Who's she talking about?" Poirot tapped, his pencil against the page. "A group, Hastings. A conspiracy, perhaps. Reginald is part, but not all. There is another or others pulling the strings. The motive, it is not just the diamonds, it is control, power over the Ashford estate." The afternoon brought a new lead. A constable arrived with news from the docks. Blackjack, the thug in the dark coat, had been spotted at a pub called the Rusty Anchor. Poirot, Japp, and Hastings set out immediately, the carriage rattling through London's crowded streets. The pub was a dingy hole, its air thick with smoke and the reek of stale beer. Blackjack, a tall man with a scarred face and a limp, sat in a corner nursing a pint. Japp's men surrounded him, but Poirot took the lead, his voice calm but firm. "Monsieur Blackjack," he said, "you have been seen near Belgrave Square, watching the Ashford estate. You sold a diamond, one of the Ashford collection, to a pawnbroker. Tell me who hired you and what was your role in Lady Beatrice's disappearance?" Blackjack's eyes darted, but he sneered. "Don't know what you're on about, mate. I ain't been near no fancy estate. As for the diamond, I found it, fair and square." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "Found it, monsieur? In a fountain, perhaps. Or given to you by someone in the house. Speak, or Inspector Japp will ensure you speak in a cell." Under pressure, Blackjack cracked, his voice low. All right, I was paid to watch the place, keep an eye on the lady. Didn't touch her, swear it. Bloke in a mask gave me the diamond, told me to sell it, make it look like a theft. Said it'd throw you lot off." "A mask," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "And this man, what did he sound like? His build, his manner?" Blackjack shrugged. "Posh voice like one of them toffs. Not too tall, lean. Didn't see his face, but he moved quick, like he knew what he was doing." Poirot nodded, dismissing. The thug to Japp's custody. Back at the estate, he shared the information with Hastings. Chapter 5. The cryptic note, the 5th day at 17 Belgrave Square, brought a restless energy to the Ashford estate, as if the very walls sensed the tightening grip of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The clouds that had loomed the previous day had broken, and a sharp cold rain lashed the windows, casting rivulets of water across the Georgian mansion's elegant facade. Inside, the atmosphere was no less stormy, with suspicion hanging over the household like a pall. Poirot, his black suit as pristine as ever, his mustache a meticulous arc, stood in Lady Beatrice Ashford's bedroom, his green eyes fixed on a small folded piece of paper he held in his gloved hand. Captain Arthur Hastings, his face etched with curiosity, leaned closer, while Inspector Japp, his patience wearing thin, stood by the door, arms crossed. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice rough with frustration. "We've got a footprint, a cigarette, a receipt, and now this Blackjack fellow spinning tales about a masked man. But we're no closer to finding Lady Beatrice. What's this note you're fussing over? Another wild goose chase?" Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile, his fingers delicately unfolding the paper. "Non, Inspector. This note, it is not a goose, wild or otherwise. It is a whisper, from Lady Beatrice herself, a cry from the shadows, and it will lead us closer to the truth." The note had been discovered that morning, tucked inside a hollowed-out book in Lady Beatrice's bedside table, a volume of Tennyson's poems, its pages carefully cut to conceal the folded paper. The note, written in her elegant script, was brief but cryptic. "If I am gone, look to the heart of the legacy. They will not take it. B.A." The ink was fresh, the paper uncreased, suggesting it had been written mere hours before her disappearance. Hastings peered over Poirot's shoulder, his brow furrowed. "The heart of the legacy? What's that supposed to mean, Poirot? The diamonds, the estate, and who's they again?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. "Précisément, Hastings. The they. We have heard before, in her diary, in her fears. This note, it is her insurance, her message to us. The legacy, it is more than diamonds. It is power, control, perhaps even a secret she guarded. We must find this heart to find her." The discovery of the note shifted the investigation's focus. Poirot returned to the study, where the safe behind Sir Edmund's portrait held the Ashford diamonds. He examined it again, noting the untouched velvet trays, the glittering stones within. But the note's words, "the heart of the legacy," suggested something beyond the obvious. He rifled through the desk, finding more papers, estate records, a list of charitable donations, and a sealed envelope addressed to Mr. Hargreaves, the solicitor. The envelope was unopened, its wax seal intact, and Poirot set it aside for later. He turned to the household, summoning them to the drawing room. Reginald Ashford, his face pale and his cigarette ever present, lounged in an armchair. Clara, the maid, sat nervously, her hands twisting her handkerchief. Grayson, the butler, stood by the door, his gray eyes impassive. Mrs. Henshaw, the cook, and Tompkins, the gardener, occupied the back, their expressions wary. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, holding up the note. This was found in Lady Beatrice's room, hidden where only she would know. It speaks of a legacy, of a threat, of they. One of you, or perhaps several, know more than you say. Who are they, and what is this heart she protects? Reginald exhaled a plume of smoke, his voice sharp. Another riddle? Poirot. Aunt Beatrice was always fond of her little secrets. Maybe she meant the diamonds, maybe the house. She was paranoid, I told you. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. Paranoid, Monsieur Ashford, or prudent? You who lied about your whereabouts, who pressed her to sell the diamonds, you know of this legacy, do you not? Reginald's jaw tightened. I've told you everything. I wanted to help her invest, not steal from her. Poirot turned to Clara, his voice softening. Mademoiselle, you served Lady Beatrice closely. Did she speak of this legacy, of something she guarded? Clara's eyes darted to Grayson, then back to Poirot. She mentioned the diamonds sometimes, sir. Said they were more than just stones, that they carried the family's honor. But she never explained. She'd get quiet like she was thinking hard. Poirot nodded, his attention shifting to Grayson. And you, Monsieur Grayson, who have served this house for 20 years, you know its secrets. What is this heart Lady Beatrice speaks of? Grayson's face remained impassive. I know only what Lady Beatrice shared, Mr. Poirot. The diamonds are the legacy, the pride of the Ashford name. If she meant something else, she did not confide in me. Confide, Poirot said, his tone thoughtful. Yet you dismissed. The stranger at the gates, you heard no thud, you saw no threat. Your loyalty, it is admirable, but is it to Lady Beatrice or to another? Grayson's eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Poirot dismissed the group save for Clara, whom he asked to stay. The maid's hands shook as she sat, her eyes fixed on the floor. Mademoiselle, Poirot said gently, you are afraid, but you must speak. Lady Beatrice trusted you. Did she hide something, perhaps in her room in the house? Clara hesitated, then whispered. She had a box, sir. A small one, locked in her wardrobe. She said it was private, not to touch it. I saw her with it sometimes late at night writing in it. Poirot's eyes lit up. A box, mademoiselle, merci. You have done well. He and Hastings returned to the bedroom, searching the wardrobe. Behind a row of silk gowns they found a small rosewood box, its lock intricate but unyielding. The tiny key Poirot had found earlier, etched with a delicate pattern, fit perfectly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a list of names, none familiar, and a phrase. The heart lies. Where the past meets the future, Hastings scratched his head. More riddles, Poirot. Names, a phrase. What does it mean? Poirot's fingers traced the words. It is a clue, Hastings, to a secret Lady Beatrice guarded. These names, they are not random. They are connected. To the legacy, perhaps to the they she feared. We must learn who they are. The afternoon was spent investigating the names. Poirot sent a telegram to Mr. Hargreaves, requesting information on the list, and another to Vandermeer and Sons, asking about rival buyers. He also revisited Blackjack's confession, the masked man with the posh voice gnawing at him. The A. Thug was in custody, but Japp reported he'd revealed little more, only that the masked man had paid in cash and promised more if the diamond sale went unnoticed. Poirot returned to the study, opening the sealed envelope to Hargreaves. It contained a draft of a new will, naming a charitable trust as the primary beneficiary, with Reginald receiving only a modest sum. A note in Lady Beatrice's hand read, "To protect what matters most." The will was unsigned, suggesting she'd been interrupted before finalizing it. This, Poirot said to Hastings, is the motive. The legacy is not just the diamonds but the control of the estate. Someone sought to stop this will to keep the fortune in their hands. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows as Poirot gathered the household in the dining room. The chandelier cast a warm glow, but the atmosphere was cold, tense. He held up the list from the box. This, he said, was hidden by Lady Beatrice. Names, unknown to me, but known to someone here. They are tied to the heart of the legacy. Who among you knows these names? Reginald's face was pale, his cigarette unlit. I don't know them, Poirot. If she had secrets, she kept them from me. Clara's eyes widened, but she said, nothing. Grayson's posture stiffened, his gaze fixed on the list. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins shook their heads, their confusion genuine. Poirot continued, his voice rising. Lady Beatrice feared a conspiracy, a group seeking to control her. Legacy. This note, this list, they are her defense. Someone in this house or close to it knows the truth. Speak or the truth will find you. The room was silent, the rain a relentless backdrop. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. The note, the list, the will. They pointed to a deeper motive, a struggle for power. Reginald's debts made him a suspect, but his ignorance of the names suggested he was not the mastermind. Clara's fear hinted at knowledge, but her youth made her an unlikely orchestrator. Grayson's calm was too perfect, his silence too deliberate. As night fell, Poirot sat in the library, the fire crackling, his notebook open. He sketched connections, the note, the box, the names, the masked man. Hastings, yawning, joined him. It's a devil of a puzzle, Poirot, he said. This heart of the legacy business. Could it be a person? A child, maybe, from her past? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A child, Hastings? An interesting thought. The past meets the future. Perhaps a secret heir, a hidden truth. Tomorrow we shall dig into Lady Beatrice's history. The whispers of motive, they grow louder. The rain continued, a steady rhythm against the estate's walls, as Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, unraveling the cryptic note that held the key to the vanishing heiress. Chapter 6. A Trail of Deceptions. The 6th day at 17 Belgrave Square dawned with a deceptive calm, the rain of the previous night giving way to a pale, hesitant sun that cast long shadows across the estate's manicured lawns. The grand Georgian mansion, its ivy-clad walls glistening with residual damp, stood as a silent witness to the deepening mystery of Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance. Hercule Poirot, his black suit immaculate, his mustache a precise arc, paced the library, his green eyes alight with the intensity of a man closing in on a truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook worn from constant use, sat at a table scribbling observations, while Inspector Japp, his patience stretched to breaking, leaned against a bookshelf, his expression one of barely concealed frustration. Poirot, Japp said, his voice edged with exasperation. We've got a note, a list of names, a dodgy receipt, and a thug who claims he was hired by a masked man. But we're no closer to finding Lady Beatrice. This trail of yours, it's leading us. In circles, what's next? Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile as he paused, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. Circles, Inspector? No. This is no circle but a spiral, drawing us ever closer to the center. The trail is not aimless. It is a trail of deceptions carefully laid to mislead. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through the fog. Today we follow a new lead. One planted to divert us, and in doing so we shall uncover the hand that placed it. Hastings looked up, his brow furrowed. Planted, Poirot? You mean someone's deliberately throwing us off? That blackjack fellow, perhaps? Or Reginald with his lies about the club? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Précisément, Hastings. The diamond sold to the pawnbroker, the cigarette at the gate, the masked man. These are not accidents but breadcrumbs meant to lead us astray. The question is, who scatters them, and why? The morning began with a return to the evidence. Poirot re-examined the cryptic note found in Lady Beatrice's hidden box. If I am gone, look to the heart of the legacy. They will not take it. B.A. The list of names, unknown figures like C. Langley, E. Harrow, and M. Vane remained a puzzle, but Poirot sensed they were key. He had sent telegrams to Mr. Hargreaves, the solicitor, and Vandermeer and Sons. the Amsterdam diamond merchant, but replies were slow, delayed by the complexities of international communication. For now, he focused on the household. Convinced, the trail of deceptions began within these walls. Poirot summoned Reginald Ashford to the study, where the safe behind Sir Edmund's portrait gleamed in the morning light. Reginald, his hair disheveled, his cigarette ever present, entered with a scowl, his posture defensive. "Monsieur Ashford," Poirot said, seating himself behind the oak desk, "your lies have been uncovered. Your visit to the club, your false alibi. But there is more, I think. The diamond sold to the pawnbroker, it was one of the Ashford collection, oui? Did you arrange this to make it appear a theft?" Reginald's face reddened, his cigarette trembling in his hand. "I told you, Poirot, I had nothing to do with her disappearance. I don't know about any diamond being sold. I checked the safe. It's all there." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "And yet a diamond was sold by a man matching the description of Black Jack, who claims he was hired by a masked man with a posh voice. Your voice, monsieur, is educated, refined. Were you this masked man?" Reginald slammed his fist on the desk, his voice rising. "That's absurd. I'm not some criminal mastermind. I wanted Aunt Beatrice to sell the diamonds, yes, to clear my debts, but I didn't steal them and I didn't hurt her." Poirot tilted his head, his tone calm but piercing. "Debts, monsieur. They weigh heavily, do they not? Enough to drive a man to desperate acts, to plant clues, to mislead. The receipt from the club, it places you away from the house at 10:30. Where were you after until midnight?" Reginald hesitated, his eyes darting. I walked home. Took my time. Through the park. I was back by 11, like I said." "Through the park," Poirot repeated, his voice soft. "In the fog. Alone. A convenient story, but unverifiable. We shall see." He dismissed Reginald, who stormed out, leaving a trail of smoke. Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression thoughtful. "He is frightened, Hastings, but not guilty. Not entirely. He knows something, but he is not the architect of this crime. The trail, it leads elsewhere." The next interview was with Clara, the maid, in the small parlor off the kitchen. Her hands shook as she sat, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. He spoke gently, his voice almost soothing. "Mademoiselle Clara," he said, "you have been most helpful, speaking of Lady Beatrice's fears, her box. But there is more, I think. The thud you heard at midnight, the stranger at the gates, did you see anything else, perhaps someone moving in the house?" Clara's lips trembled, her voice barely audible. I don't know, sir. I was scared, after the thud. I thought I saw a shadow outside my door, but it was gone when I looked. I didn't dare go out." "A shadow," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "And this shadow, it moved toward Lady Beatrice's room or away?" Clara shook her head. "I couldn't tell, sir. It was quick, like a flicker. I thought I imagined." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your fear, it is understandable, but your eyes, they see more than you think." Grayson the butler was next, summoned to the dining room. His posture was as rigid as ever, his gray eyes meeting Poirot's without flinching. Poirot held up the list of names from the box. "Monsieur Grayson," he said. "These names, C. Langley, E. Harrow, M. Vane. They mean nothing to you?" Lady Beatrice hid them, guarded them. "Why?" Grayson's lips tightened. "I know nothing of such names, Mr. Poirot. Lady Beatrice kept her own counsel. If she hid a list, it was her private matter." "Private," Poirot said, his tone sharp. "Yet you, who know every corner of this house, saw no stranger, heard no thud, dismissed the man at the gates. Your silence, monsieur. It is a deception in itself." Grayson's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. "I have served this house faithfully, Mr. Poirot. I have nothing to hide." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Faithfully, oui. But to whom?" "We shall see." The interviews with Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins were brief. The cook, flustered, reiterated her story of the stranger, adding that he'd carried a small bag, perhaps a satchel. Tompkins, gruff as ever, insisted he'd been asleep, unaware of any trouble. Poirot noted their responses but sensed they were peripheral, their roles minor in the grand scheme. The afternoon brought a new lead. A reply from Mr. Hargreaves, the solicitor, arrived by courier. The names on the list were unfamiliar to him, but he confirmed that Lady Beatrice had been revising her will, intending to leave the bulk of her estate to a charitable trust for orphaned children. The trust, he noted, was linked to a foundation she'd supported for years, one tied to her late husband's philanthropy. The names, he suggested, might be trustees or beneficiaries, though he had no records of them. Poirot's eyes lit up as he read the letter. "The heart of the legacy, Hastings," he said, tapping the paper. "It is not just the diamonds, but this trust, this cause. Lady Beatrice sought to protect it, and someone sought to stop her." Hastings frowned. "But why? If the diamonds are still in the safe, what's the gain?" Poirot's gaze was distant. "Control, mon ami. The estate, the fortune, the power. It is all at stake. The diamond sold by Black Jack, it was a deception, meant to make us think theft was the motive. But the true motive is deeper, hidden in the past." Determined to follow this trail, Poirot ventured to the Foundation's office in London, a modest building near Bloomsbury. The director, a kindly woman named Mrs. Ellison, confirmed Lady Beatrice's involvement. The Foundation supported orphans, many from families tied to the Ashford diamond mines in South Africa. The names on the list, she said, were likely former beneficiaries now grown, whom Lady Beatrice had quietly supported. One name, C. Langley, stood out. She recalled a Charles Langley, a young man who'd visited Lady Beatrice months earlier, seeking funds for a business venture. Charles Langley, Poirot murmured, his mind racing. A link to the past, perhaps, a key to the present. Back at the estate, Poirot confronted Reginald about Langley. The nephew's face paled, his cigarette dropping to the floor. "Langley? I've heard the name. Aunt Beatrice mentioned him once, said he was trouble, always asking for money. I didn't think much of it." "Trouble," Poirot said, his voice sharp. "And yet, you did not mention this before." "Why?" Reginald stammered. "It didn't seem important. She dealt with lots of people, charities, hangers-on. I thought he was just another one." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Another deception, monsieur. You know more than you say." The evening brought a startling discovery. While searching the attic, Hastings found a hidden bundle of letters, tied with a ribbon, tucked behind a rafter. They were from Charles Langley, written over years thanking Lady Beatrice for her support, but growing increasingly demanding. The final letter, dated a month prior, was threatening. "You cannot hide the truth forever. The legacy is mine as much as yours." Poirot read the letter, his expression grim. This Langley, he is part of the they, but is he the masked man or another pawn? The trail it twists, but we follow. Japp's men tracked Langley to a boarding house in Whitechapel. Poirot and Hastings accompanied them, finding a thin, nervous man in his 30s, his face marked by a scar across denied involvement in her disappearance. He claimed the diamond was a gift, given to him by... Chapter 7. The clock ticks. The 7th day at 17 Belgrave Square brought an oppressive weight to the Ashford estate, as if time itself pressed against the walls of the grand Georgian mansion. The pale sun of the previous day had vanished, replaced by a sky heavy with slate-gray clouds casting the ivy-clad facade in a somber hue. The mystery of Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance had grown more tangled, with each clue: a smudged footprint, a half-smoked cigarette, a cryptic note, a threatening letter from Charles Langley, pointing to a conspiracy woven deep within the household. Hercule Poirot, his black suit as immaculate as ever, his mustache a precise arc, stood in the library, his green eyes scanning the shelves with an intensity that belied the calm of his demeanor. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook worn and ink-stained, sat at a table, his face etched with worry, while Inspector Japp, his frustration now a palpable force, paced the room, his boots thudding against the polished floor. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice rough with impatience, We've got a pile of clues and a house full of liars, but no Lady Beatrice. This Langley chap's in custody, spinning tales about a friend who gave him the diamond, and we're no closer to finding her. You keep talking about motives and deceptions, but we need results. The press is hounding us and the families screaming for answers. What's your next move? Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile as he turned from the shelves, a small ledger in his gloved hands. Results, Inspector? They come to those who listen to the ticking of the clock. Time, it is our ally and our enemy. This morning, a new piece of the puzzle has emerged, one that tells us the clock is ticking, not just for Lady Beatrice, but for her legacy. We have 48 hours, mes amis, to find her, or the heart of the Ashford fortune will be lost forever. Hastings looked up, his pen pausing. 48 hours, Poirot? What's this about, another riddle? Poirot's eyes gleamed as he opened the ledger, revealing a page marked with Lady Beatrice's elegant script. Non, Hastings, not a riddle, but a deadline. This ledger, found hidden behind a panel in the study, details a transaction set to occur in 2 days' time. The Ashford diamonds, or a portion of them, are to be transferred to a trust, as per Lady Beatrice's new will. But if she is not present to sign the documents, the fortune reverts to another, someone who stands to gain everything. The ledger, discovered during a meticulous search of the study, outlined a complex arrangement. Lady Beatrice had planned to transfer the bulk of her estate, including the diamonds, to a charitable trust for orphans, as confirmed by her solicitor, Mr. Hargreaves. However, the transaction required her signature, scheduled for the morning of the 9th day. Without her, the estate would pass to the next in line, Reginald Ashford, her nephew, whose debts made him a prime suspect. The ledger also mentioned a safeguard, a mysterious provision to protect the heart of the legacy, echoing the cryptic note found earlier. This, Poirot said, tapping the ledger, is why she was taken. Not for theft, but to prevent this transfer. The clock ticks and we must move quickly. The morning was spent interrogating the household, with Poirot's questions sharper, his tone more urgent. He began with Reginald, summoned to the drawing room where the fire crackled, casting shadows across the velvet drapes. Reginald, his face pale, his cigarette trembling, stood by the window, his eyes darting to the rain-slicked garden. Monsieur Ashford, Poirot said, holding up the ledger. You stand to gain a fortune if your aunt does not sign her new will. Your debts, they would vanish, oui? Did you know of this deadline? Reginald's jaw tightened, his voice hoarse. I knew she was planning something with the diamonds, but not the details. She didn't trust me with that. I didn't know about any deadline. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. And yet you lied about your whereabouts, pressed her to sell the diamonds, knew of Charles Langley. The ledger, it names you as the beneficiary if she fails to act. A coincidence, perhaps. Reginald's hands clenched. I didn't take her, Poirot, I swear it. Yes, I need money, but I wouldn't hurt her. She's family. Family, Poirot said, his tone soft but piercing. A word that carries weight, but also motive. Where were you truly between 10:30 and midnight the night she vanished? Reginald hesitated, his eyes flickering. I told you I walked home from the club. I was in the park clearing my head. I didn't see anything. Didn't hear anything. Poirot nodded, dismissing him with a wave. We shall verify, monsieur. The truth, it has a way of surfacing. Next, Poirot spoke with Clara, the maid, in the small parlor off the kitchen. Her hands shook as she sat, her eyes wide with fear. Poirot's voice was gentle, almost paternal. Mademoiselle Clara, he said, you heard a thud at midnight. Saw a shadow. Did Lady Beatrice ever speak of this deadline, this transfer of her fortune? Clara's lips trembled. She mentioned a trust, sir, a few weeks ago. Said it was important, that it would set things right. She was nervous, kept looking at her watch like time was running out. Time, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. And this shadow you saw, mademoiselle, was it near her room? Did it carry anything? A bag, perhaps, like the one Madame Henshaw saw with the stranger? Clara shook her head, her voice barely audible. I don't know, sir. It was dark, quick. I was too scared to look closely. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Merci, mademoiselle. Your fear, it is understandable, but your memory, it is valuable. Grayson, the butler, was summoned to the dining room, his posture as rigid as ever, his gray eyes meeting Poirot's without flinching. Poirot held up the ledger, his voice calm but firm. Monsieur Grayson, he said, you have served Lady Beatrice for 20 years, known her plans, her fears. This ledger speaks of a deadline, a transfer of the Ashford fortune. Did you know of this? Grayson's lips tightened. Lady Beatrice shared little of her financial plans, Mr. Poirot. I knew of her charitable interests, but not of any deadline. My duty was to the house, not its finances. Duty? Poirot said, his tone sharp. Yet you dismissed the stranger at the gates, heard no thud, saw no shadow. This ledger, it was hidden. Did you know of its hiding place? Grayson's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. No, sir. I am not privy to such secrets. Poirot's mustache twitched. Secrets, monsieur. They are the currency of this house, and you, I think, trade in them. The interviews with Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins were brief. The cook, flustered, recalled Lady Beatrice's recent preoccupation with papers, muttering about doing right by the past. Tompkins, gruff as ever, claimed ignorance, insisting he was asleep in his cottage. Poirot noted their responses, but sensed they were peripheral, their knowledge limited. The afternoon brought a new lead. A reply from Vandermeer and Sons, the Amsterdam diamond merchant, confirmed that a rival buyer, an anonymous party, had offered a substantial sum for the Ashford diamonds, but Lady Beatrice had declined, citing her intent to transfer them to the trust. The rival's identity was hidden, but the offer was made through a London intermediary, a firm called Harrow & Vane. The names matched two from Lady Beatrice's list, E. Harrow and Monsieur Vane. Poirot's eyes lit up. Harrow & Vane, Hastings, he said, tapping the telegram. They are not just names but players in this game. The trail of deceptions, it leads to them. Determined to follow this lead, Poirot and Japp visited the offices of Harrow & Vane, a discreet firm near Mayfair. The manager, a nervous man named Mr. Carver, admitted to representing the anonymous buyer but claimed ignorance of their identity, communicating only through coded telegrams. He provided a single telegram, dated a week before the disappearance. Secure the diamonds at all costs. Time is short. This, Poirot said, holding the telegram, is the clock ticking. The buyer, they knew of the deadline, sought to stop it. But how? By removing Lady Beatrice? Back at the estate, Poirot confronted the household, gathering them in the drawing room. The fire crackled, casting shadows across the tense faces. He held up the telegram and the ledger. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, a deadline approaches, 48 hours to save Lady Beatrice's legacy. The diamonds, they were to be given to a trust, but someone sought to stop this. Harrow & Vane, names from her list, are linked to a rival buyer. Who among you knows of this firm? Reginald's face paled, his cigarette unlit. I've never heard of them, Poirot. I swear. Clara's hands shook, her eyes fixed on the floor. Grayson's posture stiffened, his gaze unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins shook their heads, their confusion genuine. Poirot continued, his voice rising. The trail of deceptions is clear. A diamond sold to mislead, a masked man to confuse, a deadline to pressure. Someone in this house, or close to it, works with Harrow & Vane. The clock ticks and Lady Beatrice's life hangs in the balance. Speak, or the truth will find you. The room was silent, the tension a living thing. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. The ledger, the telegram, the names, they pointed to a conspiracy, a race against time. Reginald's debts made him a suspect, but his ignorance of Harrow & Vane suggested he was a pawn. Clara's fear hinted at knowledge, but her youth made her an unlikely mastermind. Grayson's calm was too perfect, his silence too deliberate. As night fell, Poirot sat in the library, the fire casting flickering shadows. He opened his notebook, sketching connections, the ledger, the telegram, the names, the masked man. Hastings, yawning, joined high. Chapter 8. Masquerade of Motives, the 8th day at 17. Belgrave Square dawned with a brittle tension, the air sharp with the scent of rain-soaked earth. The grand Georgian mansion, its ivy-clad walls glistening under a weak sun, seemed to pulse. With secrets, each room a stage for the unfolding drama of Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance. Hercule Poirot, his black suit as pristine as ever, his mustache a meticulous arc, stood in the dining room, overseeing preparations for a dinner he had orchestrated, a calculated gathering designed to unmask the motives behind the crime. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook tucked under his arm, adjusted his tie nervously while Inspector Japp, his patience worn thin, muttered about the futility of fancy dinners in solving a case. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice gruff, "we've got 48 hours until this trust deadline and you're throwing a dinner party? We should be out there chasing down this Harrow and Vane lead, not sipping wine with a bunch of suspects." Poirot's green eyes gleamed as he adjusted a silver candelabra on the table. "Patience, Inspector. The dinner, it is not for pleasure but for psychology. The guilty they hide behind masks of innocence, but under the pressure of a gathering the masks slip. Tonight we shall see their true faces, their motives laid bare." Hastings, polishing a wineglass absent-mindedly, looked skeptical. "A dinner, Poirot? You think Reginald or Grayson will just confess over roast beef? Or Clara, for that matter? They're all scared stiff, but nobody's talking." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Précisément, Hastings. Fear it is a great revealer. Tonight we shall stir the pot, mix the motives, and watch what rises to the surface. The clock ticks, and the truth, it cannot hide forever." The dining room was transformed for the occasion, its long mahogany table set with fine china, crystal goblets, and flickering candles. The chandelier above cast a warm glow, but the atmosphere was anything but convivial. The household, Reginald, Ashford, Clara the maid, Grayson the butler, Mrs. Henshaw the cook, and Tompkins the gardener, were summoned, along with Mr. Hargreaves, the solicitor, who had arrived from London to discuss the trust deadline. Poirot had also invited Mrs. Ellison, the director of the charitable foundation, whose insights into the trust and Charles Langley had proven valuable. As the guests took their seats, Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small frame commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "we gather tonight not for celebration but for truth. Lady Beatrice Ashford has vanished, her legacy hangs in the balance, and the clock ticks toward a deadline that may change everything. Each of you holds a piece of this puzzle, some knowingly, some not. Tonight we shall uncover the motives that drive this crime." Reginald, seated to Poirot's right, lit a cigarette, his hands trembling slightly. "This is ridiculous, Poirot. You're turning a family tragedy into a parlor game. I've told you everything I know." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Everything, Monsieur Ashford? Your debts, your lies about the night of the disappearance, your knowledge of Charles Langley, these are not everything. You stand to gain a fortune if the trust is not signed. Is that your motive?" Reginald's face reddened, but he held Poirot's gaze. "I didn't take her. Yes, I need money, but I wouldn't hurt her. She's my aunt." Poirot turned to Clara, seated across from Reginald, her face pale, her hands clutching a napkin. "Mademoiselle Clara, you heard a thud, saw a shadow, knew of Lady Beatrice's fears. Did she speak of enemies within this house? Of those who sought her fortune?" Clara's voice was barely audible. She was afraid, sir. Said people wanted what wasn't theirs. She didn't name names, but she'd lock her door, check the windows. I thought she was just nervous." "Nervous," Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. "Or wise. You saw a shadow, mademoiselle. Was it one of these people here?" Clara's eyes darted to Grayson, then away. "I don't know, sir. It was dark, quick. I was scared." Grayson, standing by the sideboard, his posture rigid, met Poirot's gaze without flinching. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, You have served this house for 20 years, yet you dismiss the stranger at the gates. Hear no thud, see no shadow. Your loyalty, is it to Lady Beatrice or to another who seeks her legacy? Grayson's lips tightened. My loyalty is to this house, Mr. Poirot. I know nothing of shadows or strangers. Lady Beatrice's plans were her own. Poirot's mustache twitched. Plans, oui. The ledger, the trust, the deadline. These were her plans, and someone sought to stop them. You, perhaps? Grayson's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. I am a servant, not a conspirator. Mrs. Henshaw, serving the soup, flushed, under Poirot's scrutiny. Madame, he said, you saw the stranger, reported him to Grayson, yet nothing was done. Did you see this man again, perhaps closer to the house? Mrs. Henshaw shook her head, her voice trembling. No, sir. Just that once by the gates. He had a bag, like I said, but I didn't see his face. Tompkins, the gardener, grunted from the end of the table. I was in my cottage, like I told you. Didn't see nothing, didn't hear nothing. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Mr. Hargreaves, a thin man with spectacles who sat nervously, clutching a briefcase. Monsieur Hargreaves, the trust, it is the heart of this mystery. Lady Beatrice intended to give her fortune to orphans, not to her nephew. Did she speak of threats, of those who opposed her? Hargreaves cleared his throat, his voice precise. She was determined, Mr. Poirot. She spoke of protecting the legacy, of righting past wrongs. She mentioned no specific threats, but she was cautious, secretive. Mrs. Ellison, the foundation director, nodded. Lady Beatrice was passionate about the trust. She said it was her duty to the children of the diamond mines, to her husband's memory. She never mentioned enemies, but she was guarded, especially, recently. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he raised his glass. A toast, mes amis, to truth. For tonight we shall peel away the masks, reveal the motives, to Lady Beatrice and the justice she deserves. The dinner progressed, the tension rising, with each course. Poirot steered the conversation, probing subtly, watching reactions. He spoke of the cryptic note, "If I am gone, look to the heart of the legacy," and the list of names, noting Clara's flinch when he mentioned Charles Langley. He described the telegram from Harrow and Vane, the rival buyers, and saw Reginald's hand tighten on his glass. Grayson's calm remained unshaken, but his eyes followed every word. As the main course was served, Poirot leaned forward, his voice low but commanding. Let us consider motives, Monsieur Ashford. Your debts are a heavy burden. The trust would leave you with little. Did you act to stop it? Reginald's voice was sharp. I've said it before, Poirot. I didn't touch her. I wanted her. To sell the diamonds, yes, but that's all. Poirot turned to Clara. Mademoiselle, your fear suggests knowledge. Did someone pressure you to stay silent? Perhaps someone close? Clara's eyes filled with tears. No, sir, I swear I don't know anything more. I just want her safe. Grayson, serving wine, was next. Monsieur Grayson, your loyalty is admirable, but is it misplaced? Did you aid another, perhaps to secure a share of the legacy? Grayson's voice was cold. I serve this house, Mr. Poirot. I have no other motive. The conversation turned to Charles Langley, the scarred man in custody. Poirot revealed his threatening letters, watching for reactions. Reginald shifted uncomfortably. Clara's hands shook, and Grayson's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins seemed genuinely confused, but Mr. Hargreaves paled, his fingers gripping his briefcase. Monsieur Hargreaves, Poirot said, you knew of Langley's connection to Lady Beatrice. Did you know of his demands, his claim to the legacy? Hargreaves hesitated. She mentioned him once, a young man she'd helped years ago. She said he'd become troublesome, but she didn't elaborate. Mrs. Ellison added, Langley came to the foundation asking for funds. Lady Beatrice refused, said he'd squandered her help. I didn't think he'd go this far. As dessert was served, Poirot stood, his voice rising. Mesdames et messieurs, this is a masquerade of motives. Greed, betrayal, fear. The ledger, the note, the letters, the telegram, they point to a conspiracy to stop the trust, to seize the legacy. Someone here knows the truth. The clock ticks, and Lady Beatrice's life hangs in the balance. Speak, or the truth will unmask you. The room fell silent, the candles flickering. Reginald stubbed out his cigarette, his face ashen. Clara sobbed quietly. Grayson's posture stiffened and Hargreaves clutched his briefcase tighter. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins exchanged uneasy glances. Poirot sat, his eyes scanning each face. The dinner ended, the guests dispersing, but the tension lingered. As Poirot and Hastings retired to the library, Japp joined them, shaking his head. "That was a performance, Poirot," he said. "But did it get us anywhere? They're all hiding. Something, but nobody's cracking." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "They are cracking, Inspector, in small ways. Clara's fear, Reginald's nerves, Grayson's calm, they betray their motives. The masquerade has begun to unravel." Hastings yawned, his notebook open. "It's a devil of a case, Poirot. This trust business, Langley, the masked man, it's like a maze." Poirot smiled, his little gray cells alight. "A maze, oui, but one with an exit. Tomorrow we follow the trail to Harrow and Vane, and with it, the truth. The clock ticks, but Hercule Poirot shall not be outrun." Chapter 9. The Hidden Room. The 9th day at 17 Belgrave Square cast a restless pall over the Ashford estate, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and fading roses. The grand Georgian mansion, its ivy-clad walls catching the weak morning. Light seemed to pulse with secrets, each corner hiding a fragment of the truth behind Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance. Hercule Poirot, his black suit immaculate, his mustache a precise arc, stood in the corridor outside the library. His green eyes narrowed as he traced the grain of a wood-paneled wall. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook clutched tightly, hovered nearby, his face a mix of curiosity and fatigue, while Inspector Japp, his frustration now a simmering boil, leaned against a doorframe, his arms crossed. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice rough. "We're down to the wire, less than 24 hours until this trust deadline, and we've got nothing but riddles and liars. Your dinner last night stirred them up, sure, but we're no closer to finding Lady Beatrice. What's this about a wall? You chasing ghosts now?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile as he ran a gloved finger along the panel, pausing at a subtle seam. "Ghosts, Inspector? No. I chase the truth, and it hides not in the ether but in the very bones of this house. This wall, it whispers of a secret, a hidden room perhaps where the answers to our puzzle lie." Hastings, scratching his head, looked skeptical. "A hidden room, Poirot? In a place like this? We've searched every inch, attic, cellar, bedrooms. Where's there room for a secret?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he pressed lightly on the panel, hearing a faint click. "Précisément, Hastings. The best secrets are hidden in plain sight where no one thinks to look. This house, it is old, built with the cunning of a bygone era. Come, we shall see what it conceals." The discovery had begun that morning when Poirot, restless after the tense dinner, had noticed a discrepancy in the estate's floor plan, provided by Grayson under duress. The library's east wall adjacent to the study was slightly shorter than expected, suggesting a void. A closer inspection revealed the seam, barely visible, and a hidden latch, cunningly disguised as a knot in the wood. With a gentle push, the panel swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Japp's eyes widened. "Blimey, Poirot, you've done it again. A secret passage?" "Not a passage, Inspector," Poirot said, producing a small flashlight from his pocket. "But a room, hidden for a purpose. Let us see what it holds." The staircase led to a small, windowless chamber, its walls lined with dusty shelves and a single oak desk. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of old paper and mildew. On the desk lay a locked metal box, its surface etched with the Ashford crest. Scattered papers revealed more of Lady Beatrice's handwriting, notes on the charitable trust, lists of donations, and a single photograph, faded but clear, of a young boy, perhaps 10, with a scar across his cheek. Hastings picked up the photograph, his brow furrowed. "This boy, Poirot, could it be Charles Langley? The scar matches." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the box's lock. "Oui, Hastings. Langley, a piece of the past, tied to the heart of the legacy. This room, it, was Lady Beatrice's sanctuary where she guarded her secrets. And this box, it holds the key. Using the tiny key found earlier in Lady Beatrice's bedroom, Poirot unlocked the box. Inside was a bundle of letters, a small journal, and a legal document, a codicil to her will, dated a week before her disappearance. The codicil named Charles Langley as a beneficiary of a small trust, but only if he renounced all claims to the Ashford estate. The journal detailed Lady Beatrice's history with Langley, a boy she'd supported through the foundation, a son of a diamond mine worker, who had grown into a man consumed by resentment, believing he deserved more. This, Poirot said, holding up the codicil, is why she was taken. Langley, or someone using him, sought to stop this codicil to claim the estate. The hidden room, it was her fortress against them. Japp shook his head, his voice incredulous. So Langley's our man, but he's in custody and he swears he didn't touch her. And what about this masked man he keeps babbling about? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Langley is a pawn inspector, not the king. The masked man, with his posh voice, is the true orchestrator. This room, it shifts suspicion, but to whom? We must return to the household. The discovery of the hidden room sent ripples through the estate. Poirot gathered the household in the drawing room, the fire casting long shadows across their tense faces. Reginald Ashford, his cigarette unlit, sat stiffly, his eyes darting to the door. Clara, the maid, clutched her handkerchief, her face pale. Grayson, the butler, stood by the sideboard, his gray eyes unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins, the cook and gardener, sat at the back, their expressions wary. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, holding up the photograph of the young boy. This room, hidden in the heart of the house, reveals Lady Beatrice's secrets. Charles Langley, a boy she helped, now a man who threatens her legacy. This codicil names him, but only if he steps back. Someone sought to stop this, to keep the fortune. Who among you knows of this room? Reginald's voice was sharp. I didn't know about any room, Poirot. If Aunt Beatrice had secrets, she kept them from me. Clara's hands shook, her voice a whisper. I knew she had private places, sir. She'd spend hours in the library alone. I thought it was just for reading. Grayson's posture stiffened. The house has many old features, Mr. Poirot. I was unaware of any hidden room. Poirot's gaze was piercing. Unaware, Monsieur Grayson? You who know every creak of this house? The ledger, the note, the letters, all hidden, yet you saw nothing? Grayson's lips tightened, but he said nothing. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins shook their heads, their confusion genuine. Poirot continued, his voice rising. This room changes everything. It points to Langley, but also to another, someone close who knew of Lady Beatrice's plans. The masked man, perhaps, who hired Langley to sell the diamond, to create a false trail. The clock ticks, and the truth draws near. The room was silent, the tension palpable. Poirot dismissed them, but kept Grayson back, his eyes locked on the butler's impassive face. Monsieur Grayson, he said, your calm, it is too perfect. You knew of the stranger, dismissed him. You know the house, yet claim ignorance of this room. Are you protecting someone, or hiding your own role? Grayson's voice was cold. I serve this house, Mr. Poirot. I have no secrets. Poirot's mustache twitched. We shall see. The afternoon was spent investigating the hidden room further. Poirot found more papers, letters from Langley growing increasingly hostile, and a map of the estate marked with a cryptic X near the stables. He and Hastings ventured there, finding nothing but hay and tools, but the mark suggested a plan, perhaps an escape route or a hiding place. A telegram from Harrow and Vane, the London firm, arrived, confirming they acted as intermediaries for an anonymous buyer, but their records showed a contact within the Ashford household. The name was coded, but the initials GR stood out. Poirot's eyes narrowed. GR, he said to Hastings. Grayson, perhaps, or another deception. Japp's men searched for the masked man, following leads to the docks, but found nothing. Poirot, meanwhile, confronted Clara again, sensing her fear held more clues. In the parlor, her eyes darted nervously. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "you knew of Lady Beatrice's private places. Did you ever see her with Langley or another in the library?" Clara hesitated, then whispered, "Once, sir, I saw her arguing with a man. Not Langley, but older, well-dressed. She sent me away, said it was private. I didn't hear much, but she was angry." "Older," Poirot said, his mind racing. "A posh voice, perhaps?" Clara nodded, her voice trembling. "Maybe, sir. I don't know." The evening brought a tense gathering in the dining room, the chandelier casting a warm glow over the strained faces. Poirot held up the map, the codicil, the letters. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, "the hidden room reveals a truth. Lady Beatrice guarded a secret, a trust to protect orphans. Langley, a man from her past, sought to claim it. The masked man hired to mislead is close. The initials GR. Who do they name?" Reginald's face was ashen. Clara sobbed. Grayson's eyes were unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins sat silently, their confusion clear. Poirot's voice rose. "The clock ticks and the truth is near. The hidden room, it points to a conspiracy, a plan to seize the legacy. Speak or the truth will find you." The room was silent, the tension a living thing. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. The hidden room, the codicil, the map. They pointed to a deeper motive, a struggle for control. Grayson's calm, Clara's fear, Reginald's lies. All were threads in a web, and the masked man was its weaver. As night fell, Poirot sat in the library, the fire casting flickering shadows. He opened his notebook, sketching connections. The room, the codicil, the initials, the masked man. Hastings, yawning, joined him. "It's a devil of a case, Poirot," he said. "This hidden room, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, only to realize it's threaded with more questions." Poirot smiled, his little gray cells alight. "Oui, mon ami, but the needle, it points to the truth. Tomorrow we follow the initials GR, and with them, the heart of the legacy." Chapter 10. Twist of the past, the 10th day at 17. Belgrave Square dawned with a heavy stillness, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint tang of coal smoke drifting from London's chimneys. The grand Georgian mansion, its ivy-clad walls catching the weak morning light, stood as a silent sentinel, guarding the secrets of Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance. Hercule Poirot, his black suit as pristine as ever, his mustache a meticulous arc, stood in the library, his green eyes fixed on a faded photograph. The young boy with a scarred cheek, believed to be Charles Langley, found in the hidden room. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook creased and ink-stained, sat at a table, his face etched with fatigue, while Inspector Japp, his frustration now a barely contained storm, paced the room, his boots thudding against the polished floor. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice rough with exasperation, "we're down to the last hours before this trust deadline, and we're still chasing shadows. This hidden room, Langley's letters, those initials GR, it's all pointing somewhere, but where? Lady Beatrice is still missing, and the press is tearing us apart. What's this photograph got to do with anything?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile as he held the photograph to the light, his gloved fingers tracing the boy's scar. "Shadows, Inspector?" "None. These are not shadows, but echoes. Echoes of the past, reverberating into the present. This boy, Charles. Langley is a key, but not the lock. Today we dig into Lady Beatrice's history, for it is in the past that we shall find the twist that unlocks this mystery." Hastings, rubbing his eyes, looked skeptical. "The past, Poirot? You think Langley's the key? He's in custody, swearing he didn't touch her, and this masked man business. How does it fit with a boy from years ago?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he set the photograph down, his hands clasped behind his back. "Précisément, Hastings. The past, it is a tapestry, woven with threads of loyalty, betrayal, and secrets. Langley, he is a thread, but not the weaver. The masked man, the initials GR, the hidden room. They point to a truth buried in Lady Beatrice's history. We must unravel it before the clock runs out. The morning began with a return to the hidden room, where Poirot re-examined the contents of the metal box. The codicil, the letters, the journal. The journal, in Lady Beatrice's elegant script, detailed her support for Langley, a boy orphaned by the Ashford diamond mines in South Africa. She had funded his education through the charitable trust, hoping to right the wrongs of her family's wealth, built on the labor of exploited workers. But Langley, the journal revealed, had grown resentful, demanding more, believing he was entitled to the Ashford fortune. The final entry, dated a month before her disappearance, read, "Charles returns, angry, claiming a birthright. I fear he is not alone. The past haunts me, and I must protect the heart." "This," Poirot said, tapping the journal, "is the twist. Langley claims a birthright, but what? A share of the diamonds, or something deeper tied to the Ashford name?" Determined to uncover this past, Poirot sent a telegram to Mrs. Ellison, the foundation director, requesting all records on Langley and other beneficiaries. He also contacted the South African mining company that had employed Langley's father, seeking details of his family history. While awaiting replies, he turned to the household, summoning them to the drawing room, where the fire crackled, casting shadows across the velvet drapes. Reginald Ashford, his cigarette trembling, sat stiffly, his eyes darting to the window. Clara, the maid, clutched her handkerchief, her face pale. Grayson, the butler, stood by the door, his gray eyes unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins, the cook and gardener, sat at the back, their expressions wary. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, holding up the photograph. "This boy, Charles Langley, is tied to Lady Beatrice's past, to the mines that built her fortune. He claims a birthright, a share of the legacy. Who among you knows of this past, of his connection to the Ashford name?" Reginald's voice was sharp, his cigarette unlit. "I told you, Poirot. I barely knew of Langley. Aunt Beatrice mentioned him once, said he was a leech. I didn't know about any birthright nonsense." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And yet, Monsieur Ashford, you stand to gain if the trust fails. Did you know of Langley's claims? Did you work with him, perhaps?" "To remove your aunt?" Reginald's face reddened. "That's absurd. I didn't need Langley to ruin things. I just wanted her to sell the diamonds, clear my debts." Poirot turned to Clara, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle, you saw Lady Beatrice with a man, older, well-dressed, arguing in the library. Was it Langley or another from her past?" Clara's hands shook, her voice a whisper. I don't know, sir. He wasn't young like Langley. He was tall, spoke proper, like a gentleman. She was upset, told me to leave." "A gentleman," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "With a posh voice, perhaps? Like the masked man? Who hired Langley?" Clara's eyes widened, but she shook her head. "I don't know, sir. I didn't see his face." Grayson, his posture rigid, met Poirot's gaze. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, "you have served this house for 20 years, known its history. Did Lady Beatrice speak of Langley, of a birthright?" Grayson's lips tightened. "She mentioned the foundation, her work for the orphans. Langley was one of many she helped. I knew nothing of a birthright." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Nothing, monsieur. Yet you knew of the stranger at the gates, dismissed him. You know the house, yet claim ignorance of the hidden room. Your silence, it speaks of the past." Grayson's eyes flickered, but his voice remained steady. "I am a servant, Mr. Poirot. I do not pry into my employer's past." Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins, questioned briefly, claimed ignorance of Langley or any birthright, their responses convincing. Poirot dismissed the group but kept Reginald back, his eyes locked on the nephew's pale face. "Monsieur Ashford," he said, "your debts, your lies, your knowledge of Langley, they paint a picture. Did you know of this birthright, this claim that threatens your inheritance?" Reginald's hands clenched. "I didn't know anything about a birthright. If Langley's after the estate, he's on his own. I just wanted the money, not a conspiracy." Poirot nodded, dismissing him. "We shall see." The afternoon brought replies from Mrs. Ellison and the mining company. The foundation records confirmed Langley's history. An orphan supported by Lady Beatrice, who had turned bitter, demanding funds. The mining company's response was more startling. A letter from their archives dated 25 years prior, suggesting Langley's father, a mine foreman, had been close to Sir Edmund Ashford, Lady Beatrice's late husband. Rumors, never substantiated, hinted at a scandal, a possible affair, a child born out of wedlock, perhaps Langley himself. Poirot's eyes lit up as he read the letter. "This, Hastings," he said, "is the twist of the past. Langley may believe he is an Ashford, a hidden heir. This is the heart of the legacy, not just the diamonds, but the family itself." Jap, reading over his shoulder, snorted. "A secret heir? That's a stretch, Poirot. Langley's a thug, not a lord. And how does this get us closer to finding her?" Poirot's gaze was distant. "It tells us why she was taken, Inspector. If Langley claims the estate, the trust fails, and the fortune goes to him, or to another who uses him. The masked man, with his posh voice, is the key." Determined to follow this lead, Poirot and Jap visited Langley in custody. The scarred man, his eyes defiant, sat in a cramped cell, his limp evident as he shifted. Poirot's voice was calm but firm. "Monsieur Langley," he said, "you claim a birthright, a share of the Ashford estate. Is it because you believe you are Sir Edmund's son, a hidden heir?" Langley's face paled, his voice hoarse. "Who told you that?" I never said that. I just wanted what she owed me for all those years in the mines." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Owed, monsieur? Or claimed? You sold a diamond, hired by a masked man. Was he your ally, promising you the estate?" Langley's hands shook. "I don't know his name. He found me, said he'd make me rich if I helped. Gave me the diamond, told me to sell it, make it look like a theft. I didn't touch her, I swear." "A posh voice," Poirot said. "A gentleman, perhaps, from this house." Langley shook his head. "I never saw his face. He was careful, always in the shadows." Back at the estate, Poirot confronted Grayson, sensing the butler's calm hid more than he admitted. In the study, with the safe looming behind Sir Edmund's portrait, Poirot held up the mining company's letter. "Monsieur Grayson," he said, "you knew Sir Edmund, served him before Lady Beatrice. Did you know of a scandal? A child born in the mines?" Grayson's posture stiffened, his voice cold. "I know nothing of such rumors, Mr. Poirot. Sir Edmund was a good man, loyal to his wife." "Loyal," Poirot said, his tone sharp. "Yet, the past holds secrets, and you, who know this house, guard them. The initials GR, are they yours or another's?" Grayson's eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Poirot dismissed him, his mind racing. The evening brought a tense gathering in the dining room, the chandelier casting a warm glow over the strained faces. Poirot held up the letter, the photograph, the codicil. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, "the past has spoken. Charles Langley, a boy from the mines, believes he is an Ashford, a hidden heir. The trust, the diamonds, the estate, they are his claim, and someone aids him. The masked man, the initials GR, they point to a conspiracy within this house. The clock ticks and the truth is near." Reginald's face was ascently, their confusion. Chapter 11. The Second Disappearance. The 11th day at 17 Belgrave Square unfolded under a sky heavy with foreboding. The weak sun of previous days smothered by thick, rolling clouds that cast the grand Georgian mansion in a pall of gray. The ivy-clad walls, damp from an early morning drizzle, seemed to cling to their secrets as tightly as the household within. Hercule Poirot, his black suit as immaculate as ever, his mustache a precise arc, stood in the drawing room, his green eyes narrowed with an intensity that spoke of a mind racing against time. The deadline for Lady Beatrice Ashford's trust loomed mere hours away, and the clues, a smudged footprint, a half-smoked cigarette, a cryptic note, a hidden room, and a scandalous past had woven a complex web of deception. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook creased and ink-stained, stood by the fireplace, his face etched with worry, while Inspector Japp, his frustration now a barely contained storm, paced the room, his boots thudding against the polished floor. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice rough with exasperation, "we're out of time. The trust deadline is tomorrow morning and we've got nothing but a pile of riddles. Langley's in custody, but he's not talking. And this masked man is a ghost. Now you're saying there's another twist? What's left to find?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile as he adjusted a silver candelabra on the mantelpiece. "Time, Inspector, is indeed our enemy, but also our ally. The web of deception tightens, and the guilty, they grow careless. This morning, a new event has shaken the house, a second disappearance, one that confirms our suspicions and raises the stakes. We must act swiftly, for the truth is within our grasp." Hastings, clutching his notebook, looked alarmed. "A second disappearance, Poirot? Who's gone now? Not another member of the household?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he turned to face them, his voice calm but urgent. "Précisément, Hastings. Clara, the maid, has vanished. She was seen last night, after our gathering, serving tea in the parlor. This morning, her room is empty, her coat and hat gone, and no one saw her leave. This is no coincidence. It is the work of the mastermind, tying up loose ends as the clock ticks." The news of Clara's disappearance sent a shockwave through the estate. Poirot had discovered it at dawn when Mrs. Henshaw, the cook, reported that Clara had not appeared for her morning duties. A search of her room revealed a neatly made bed, a half-packed bag, and a single hairpin on the floor, bent as if dropped in haste. The window was unbolted, suggesting a hurried exit, but no footprints marked the damp ground outside. "This," Poirot said, holding up the hairpin in the drawing room, "is a sign of panic, of flight. Clara knew something, saw something, and someone ensured she would not speak. We must find her, for she is the key to Lady Beatrice." Japp's eyes widened. "Clara? That nervous girl? You think she's part of this or just a victim?" Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "She is both, Inspector. A witness, perhaps complicit, but now a liability. The masked man, the one with the posh voice, he moves to silence her, just as he silenced Lady Beatrice." The morning was spent in a frantic search of the estate. Poirot, Hastings, and Japp's men combed every room, from the attic's dusty rafters to the cellars' damp stone walls. They found no trace of Clara, but in the stables, behind a stack of hay bales, Poirot discovered a scrap of fabric, a piece of Clara's apron, torn and stained with mud. Nearby was a cigarette butt, identical to those found in Lady Beatrice's room and at the gate. "This," Poirot said, pocketing the fabric and cigarette, "ties Clara's disappearance to the first. The same hand is at work, leaving clues to taunt us or to mislead." Hastings, brushing hay from his coat, looked grim. "Clara, gone? It's like this house is swallowing people, Poirot. Do you think she's dead?" Poirot's expression was somber. "Dead, non? Hidden like Lady Beatrice. The mastermind needs them alive, perhaps as leverage, until the trust deadline passes. We must find where they are kept." The household was summoned to the dining room, the chandelier casting a warm glow over their strained faces. Reginald Ashford, his face pale, his cigarette unlit, sat stiffly, his eyes darting to the door. Grayson, the butler, stood by the sideboard, his gray eyes unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins, the cook and gardener, sat at the back, their expressions a mix of shock and fear. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, holding up the torn apron, "Clara has vanished, taken or fled, in the night. This fabric, this cigarette, they point to the same hand that took Lady Beatrice. The deadline looms and the guilty grow desperate. Who among you saw Clara last night? Who knows where she has gone?" Reginald's voice was sharp. "Clara? I didn't see her after dinner. She was serving tea like always. I went to my room, turned in early." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Early, Monsieur Ashford. Yet your debts, your lies, your knowledge of Langley, they make you a suspect. Did you see Clara leave or did you help her go?" Reginald's hands clenched. "I didn't touch her, Poirot. I don't know where she is. Grayson," his posture rigid, spoke next. I saw Clara in the parlor, serving tea around 9. She seemed nervous, but no more than usual. I retired to my quarters after that. Nervous, Poirot said, his tone sharp. And you, Monsieur Grayson, with the initials GR, linked to Harrow and Vane. Did you send Clara away, perhaps to protect the masked man? Grayson's lips tightened. I know nothing of her disappearance, Mr. Poirot. My duty is to this house, not to conspiracies. Mrs. Henshaw, her voice trembling, spoke up. I saw Clara in the kitchen after dinner. She was washing dishes. Quiet like. I went to bed soon after. Tompkins grunted. I was in my cottage, asleep. Didn't see her. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A house full of eyes, yet no one sees. Clara, like Lady Beatrice, vanishes into the night. And the clock ticks. Someone knows the truth. The room was silent, the tension palpable. Poirot dismissed them but kept Grayson back, his eyes locked on the butler's impassive face. Monsieur Grayson, he said, you're calm. It is too perfect. The initials GR, the hidden room, the cigarette. You are tied to this, are you? Not? Grayson's voice was cold. I am a servant, Mr. Poirot. I have no part in this. Poirot's mustache twitched. We shall see. The afternoon brought a new lead. A constable arrived with news from a local tavern. A woman matching Clara's description had been seen near the docks, accompanied by a tall man in a dark coat. Poirot, Japp, and Hastings set out immediately, the carriage rattling through London's crowded streets. At the tavern, a barkeep confirmed the sighting. Clara looking frightened with a man who limped slightly, his face obscured by a hat. Blackjack, Japp muttered. He's out on bail, thanks to some slick lawyer. You think he's got Clara? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Blackjack, or another using his name. The limp, the coat. It is a pattern. We must find them. A search of the docks yielded nothing, but a street urchin reported seeing a woman bundled into a carriage near a warehouse. Poirot's mind raced, connecting the dots. Clara, taken too. Silence her knowledge of the shadow, the thud, the masked man. He returned to the estate, determined to follow the cigarette trail. In the library, Poirot re-examined the evidence, the torn apron, the cigarette, the hidden room's contents. He found a new clue in the journal, a reference to a safe place near the estate, a cottage Lady Beatrice had used for private meetings. The map from the hidden room, marked with an X near the stables, suggested its location. Poirot, Hastings, and Japp searched the grounds, finding a small cottage hidden behind a copse of trees, its windows boarded, its door locked. Inside, they found signs of recent use, a candle stub, a blanket, and a hairpin matching the one from Clara's room. But no Clara, no Lady Beatrice. This, Poirot said, holding up the hairpin, confirms it. They were here, or are near. The mastermind moves them, keeps them hidden until the deadline passes. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the household in the dining room, the chandelier casting shadows over their tense faces. He held up the hairpin, the blanket. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, Clara's disappearance is no accident. She was taken like Lady Beatrice to silence her. The cottage, the cigarette, the limp, they point to a conspiracy, a desperate act as the deadline nears. Who among you knows of this cottage? Reginald's face was ashen, his cigarette unlit. I didn't know about any cottage, Poirot. I swear. Grayson's posture stiffened, his voice cold. The cottage is old, unused. Lady Beatrice visited it years ago, but not recently. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Not recently, Monsieur Grayson? Yet the candle, the hairpin, they are fresh. You know this house, its secrets. Are you the masked man? Grayson's eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins shook their heads, their confusion genuine. Poirot's voice rose. The second disappearance confirms the stakes. The masked man, the initials GR, the cottage, they point to a truth within this house. The clock ticks and Lady Beatrice's life hangs in the balance. Speak, or the truth will find you. The room was silent, the tension a living thing. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. Clara's disappearance, the cottage, the masked man, they pointed to a desperate move, a tightening web. Grayson's silence, Reginald's fear, they were threads, and the deadline loomed. As night fell, Poirot sat in the library, the fire, casting flickering shadows. He opened his notebook, sketching connections. The hairpin, the cottage, the initials, the masked man. Hastings, yawning, joined him. It's a devil of a Cass. Chapter 12. The Unlocked Safe. The 12th day at 17 Belgrave Square dawned with an eerie calm, the heavy clouds of the previous day parting to reveal a sky of pale, watery blue. The grand Georgian mansion, its ivy-clad walls catching the faint morning light, stood as a silent witness to the escalating mystery of Lady Beatrice Ashford's disappearance, now compounded by the vanishing of Clara, the maid. The deadline for the trust transfer loomed mere hours away, and the air within the estate crackled with tension, as if the walls themselves sensed the climax approaching. Hercule Poirot, his black suit immaculate, his mustache a precise arc, stood in the study, his green eyes fixed on the safe behind Sir Edmund Ashford's imposing portrait. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook worn and ink-stained, hovered near the desk, his face etched with exhaustion and anticipation, while Inspector Japp, his frustration now tempered by a grudging respect for Poirot's methods, leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. "Poirot," Japp said, his voice low but urgent. "We're out of time. The trust papers need signing by noon, and we've got 2 women missing, a pile of clues, and a masked man who's still a ghost. This cottage you found, empty, just more riddles. What's next? You've got something up your sleeve, I know. It." Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile as he ran a gloved finger along the edge of the safe, his gaze sharp. "Time, Inspector, is indeed pressing, but it sharpens the mind. The cottage, the hairpin, the cigarette, they are threads in a tapestry. And this morning, a new thread has emerged, one that unravels the heart of this mystery. The safe, mes amis, it is no longer locked. Someone has opened it, and what is missing tells us everything." Hastings, clutching his notebook, looked startled. "The safe, Poirot, but we checked it days ago. The diamonds were there, untouched. When did this happen?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he swung open the portrait, revealing the safe's heavy door, now slightly ajar. "Last night, Hastings, while we slept, or perhaps while we searched the cottage. The thief, they grow bold, believing the deadline protects them. But Hercule Poirot, he does not sleep when the truth is near. The safe, once a fortress of the Ashford legacy, was indeed compromised. The velvet trays that held the glittering diamonds were still present, but one tray was empty. A single diamond, the largest of the collection, was gone. In its place was a folded note, written in a hurried, unfamiliar hand. "The heart is taken. The legacy is mine." The note was unsigned, but its tone echoed the cryptic messages left by Lady Beatrice, suggesting a deliberate mimicry. "This," Poirot said, holding up the note, "is the mastermind's mistake. They seek to taunt us, to claim victory, but, in doing so, they reveal their hand. The diamond is not the heart of the legacy. It is a diversion. The true heart is Lady Beatrice, and now Clara, hidden to prevent the trust's signing." Japp's eyes widened. "A diamond stolen? Now we're talking robbery, Poirot. But why take just one? And where are the women?" Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "The diamond, Inspector, is a message, not a prize. It is sold perhaps like the one Langley peddled to create chaos. The women, they are alive, hidden close, for the mastermind needs them until the deadline passes. We must find them. And the safe, it points the way." The discovery of the unlocked safe sent shockwaves through the household. Poirot summoned the remaining occupants to the dining room, where the chandelier cast a warm glow over their tense faces. Reginald Ashford, his face ashen, his cigarette unlit, sat stiffly, his eyes darting to the door. Grayson, the butler, stood by the sideboard, his gray eyes unreadable. Mrs. Henshaw and Tompkins, the cook and gardener, sat at the back, their expressions a mix of fear and confusion. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, holding up the note from the safe. A theft has occurred under our very noses. The safe, once secure, is breached and a diamond is gone. This note claims the heart of the legacy, but it is a lie. The true heart, Lady Beatrice and Clara, are missing, hidden to stop the trust. Who among you opened the safe last night? Reginald's voice was sharp, his hands trembling. I didn't touch the safe, Poirot. I was in my room, asleep. You can't pin this on me. Poirot's gaze was piercing. Asleep, Monsieur Ashford? Yet your debts, your lies, your knowledge of Langley, they make you a suspect. The safe, it requires a key or skill. Do you possess such skill? Reginald's face reddened. I'm no safecracker. I checked the safe before, yes, but it was locked then. I swear it. Grayson, his posture rigid, spoke next. The safe is my responsibility, Mr. Poirot. I checked it yesterday evening, as always. It was secure. I know nothing of this theft. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Secure, monsieur. Grayson, yet the initials GR, linked to Harrow and Vane, point to you. Did you open the safe? Perhaps for the masked man? Grayson's lips tightened. I am a servant, not a thief. I have no part in this. Mrs. Henshaw, her voice trembling, spoke. I was in my quarters, sir. Didn't see nothing, didn't hear nothing. Tompkins grunted. Same here. Cottage asleep. Don't know about no safe. Poirot's voice rose. A house full of eyes, yet no one sees. The safe is breached, a diamond gone, and Clara missing. The clock ticks, and the guilty grow careless. Someone knows the truth. The room was silent, the tension palpable. Poirot dismissed them, but kept Grayson back, his eyes locked on the butler's impassive face. Monsieur Grayson, he said, you're calm. It is too perfect. The initials GR, the safe, the hidden room. You are tied to this, are you not? Did you aid the masked man? Grayson's voice was cold. I serve this house, Mr. Poirot. I have no secrets. Poirot's mustache twitched. Secrets, monsieur. They are the currency of this house, and you, I think, are rich in them. The morning was spent investigating the safe's breach. Poirot examined the lock, finding faint scratches suggesting a skilled hand, not a brute force. The key, kept by Lady Beatrice, was missing, likely taken with her. He also re-examined the note, its hurried script hinting at urgency, perhaps panic. The cigarette butt from the cottage, identical to those found earlier, suggested the same figure, Black Jack or someone mimicking him. A new lead emerged from Japp's men. A pawnbroker in Whitechapel reported a man attempting to sell a large diamond, matching the Ashford gem's description just hours ago. The man, tall with a limp, fled when questioned, but left behind a monogrammed handkerchief with the initials GR. Poirot's eyes lit up. GR, he said to Hastings. Grayson, or a deliberate plant? The masked man plays a dangerous game, leaving clues to confuse. Determined to follow this lead, Poirot and Japp visited the pawnbroker, a nervous man who described the seller as posh-sounding, despite his rough appearance. The handkerchief, finely embroidered, was out of place for a dockside thug, suggesting a deliberate misdirection. Poirot pocketed it, his mind racing. Back at the estate, Poirot searched Grayson's quarters, with Japp's permission. The butler's room was Spartan, but a hidden drawer revealed a photograph of a young Grayson with Sir Edmund Ashford, taken in South Africa near the mines. A letter tucked beneath was from Sir Edmund, thanking Grayson for his discretion in a delicate matter, dated 25 years ago, the same period as Langley's rumored birth. This, Poirot said, holding up the letter, ties Grayson to the past, to the scandal. He knows of Langley's claim, perhaps protected it. Japp's eyes widened. Grayson, you think he's the masked man orchestrating this? Poirot's gaze was distant. Not orchestrating, Inspector, but involved. The masked man is another. Someone with access, with power. Grayson, he guards a secret, but whose? The afternoon brought a breakthrough. A telegram from Mrs. Ellison, the foundation director, confirmed that Grayson had been a liaison between Lady Beatrice and the mine's orphans, including Langley. He had reported Langley's growing demands but never mentioned a birthright. The telegram also noted a second beneficiary, a man named Gerald Ross, initials GR, who had died years ago, but whose name appeared in Harrow and Vane's records as a contact. Gerald Ross, Poirot murmured. A ghost or a name borrowed by the living? The initials, they are a key. Poirot confronted Grayson in the study, the safe looming behind them. Monsieur Grayson, he said, holding up the photograph and letter. You knew of Langley's claim of Sir Edmund's secret. The initials GR, are they yours or Gerald Ross used to mislead? Grayson's face paled, his voice low. Gerald Ross was a friend, a mine worker who died helping Sir Edmund. I used his name once for correspondence, at Sir Edmund's request. I know nothing of Harrow and Vane. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And Langley? You knew he claimed to be an Ashford? Grayson hesitated, then nodded. Lady Beatrice told me years ago. She wanted to help him, but he grew greedy. I warned her, but she wouldn't listen. Poirot's voice was sharp. And the masked man, you know his voice, his manner? Grayson's eyes flickered, but he shook his head. I know nothing of masks. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the household in the dining room, the chandelier casting shadows over their tense faces. He held up the handkerchief, the note, the letter. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, the safe is unlocked. A diamond, gone. Clara missing. The initials GR, the masked man, the past. They point to a conspiracy to seize the legacy. Grayson, you knew of Langley's claim, used another's name. Reginald, your debts drive you. Someone here aids the masked man. The clock ticks and the truth is near. Reginald's FCRO,